She was building a shelter with broken boards. Her dead husband's brother stood watching. The sun had barely risen over the small village when Maria stepped outside, her hands already calloused from yesterday's work. The air was crisp and heavy with the smell of wet earth. She looked around at the ruins of what had once been her home. The storm had destroyed almost everything. The roof was gone, walls were broken, and even the little garden her husband had planted was flattened. All that remained were scattered boards, broken planks, and the memories of laughter and warmth that now seemed like a distant dream. Maria had been strong once, or at least she had thought so. She had built a life with her husband, filled with small joys that now felt like echoes of another world. But one accident had changed everything. He had gone out to fix the roof one evening, and a sudden misstep had taken him away forever. The news had hit her like a violent storm, leaving her standing in the middle of their empty home, clutching the hands of her two children, who were too young to understand why their father would never come back. Since that day, every moment had been a struggle. Money was tight, neighbors were kind but had their own lives, and Maria had no family close enough to lean on. She had to find a way to survive, not just for herself but for her children. Every day was a challenge, finding food, ensuring the little ones were safe, and trying to salvage what they could from the wreckage of their lives. This morning was no different. Maria had woken before dawn, her body aching, her mind racing with plans. She had found some broken boards near an abandoned construction site and decided she could use them to build a small shelter. It would not be perfect. It would not be warm like the house she once loved, but it would be safe, and that was enough for now. She carried the first board in her arms, feeling the rough wood scrape her palms, and laid it down carefully. Every plank placed was a small victory, a silent declaration that she would not give up. As she worked, Maria's thoughts drifted to her husband. She remembered the way he used to tease her about her stubbornness, how he always insisted that together they could fix anything. Now, without him, every plank, every nail, every hammer strike felt heavier. She was building not just a shelter but a monument to the life they had shared and the promises she had made to protect her children. The wind tugged at the loose pieces of wood, and she held them tight, muttering under her breath, telling herself she could do this, even if the world seemed determined to remind her of all she had lost. Her children were nearby, playing quietly with what little they had left. The youngest, a girl with curious eyes, kept glancing at her mother, trying to understand the work and the struggle behind it. The older boy carried small sticks and stones to help in his own way. Maria smiled faintly at their efforts, grateful for their innocence, even as her heart ached with the weight of responsibility. She could not afford to be tired or sad, she had to be strong for them. Then she noticed him. At first, she thought she was imagining things. A figure stood at the edge of the property, partially hidden behind a tree. Her heart skipped a beat as recognition slowly crept in. It was Alex, her late husband's brother. She had not seen him since the funeral. Their last encounter had been tense, filled with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. And now, here he was, watching her from a distance, his eyes fixed on her every move. Maria felt a swirl of emotions, anger, fear, confusion, and an unexpected flicker of hope. She had no idea why he had come, and she was not sure if she wanted to find out. Yet, as she lifted another board and hammered it into place, she could feel his gaze lingering, heavy and deliberate. It was as though he was trying to measure her strength, her courage, and perhaps even her pain. She paused for a moment, wiping the sweat from her brow, and looked in his direction. Alex stood there silently, not stepping forward, not speaking, just watching. Maria's mind raced. Did he blame her for what had happened to his brother? Was he here to judge her for surviving? Or was there some other reason for his presence, something she could not yet understand? The day wore on. The sun climbed higher, turning the small clearing into a harsh and glaring workspace. Maria's arms ached, her hands were scratched and blistered, but she continued to work, driven by an inner determination that no storm, no loss, and no sorrow could break. She hammered, measured, and adjusted the boards with meticulous care. Each piece added stability to the shelter and a small sense of accomplishment to her weary heart. Occasionally, she would glance at Alex, who still stood there. He never moved closer, but his presence was undeniable. It was both unsettling and comforting, a strange mixture that made her feel exposed and yet seen. Maria had always been independent, and the idea of someone watching her struggle made her defensive. Yet she could not deny a part of her felt reassured. Someone else cared enough to witness her fight, even in silence. By late afternoon, the framework of the shelter had taken shape. It was far from perfect, uneven in places, with gaps that the wind could slip through, but it had walls and a roof that could offer some protection. Maria stepped back to examine her work, her body trembling from exhaustion but her spirit lifted by the progress she had made. Her children ran into the shelter, laughing and playing, their joy a small balm to her weary soul. Alex finally moved. He stepped closer, carefully avoiding stepping on any of the scattered boards or debris. Maria's heart pounded in her chest, uncertain of his intentions. He did not speak at first, simply looking at the shelter, then at her, and then back at the children. His eyes softened, and for a brief moment Maria saw a reflection of the brother she had known, kind, thoughtful, and burdened by grief. "You've done well," he said quietly, his voice low but steady. Maria's fingers tightened around the hammer. She had not expected praise, certainly not from him. She said nothing, continuing to examine the shelter, pretending not to care. But inside, a small part of her welcomed the acknowledgement. It was strange, uncomfortable, yet somehow grounding. Hours passed. The sky shifted from bright blue to shades of orange and pink as the sun began to set. Maria continued to work, fixing the last loose boards, making sure nothing would fall on her children. Alex remained nearby, sometimes assisting without speaking, sometimes simply observing. There was no conversation about the past, no mention of grief or loss, only the silent understanding that life must go on, and survival required effort, courage, and sometimes unexpected support. By the time the first stars appeared in the night sky, the shelter was complete, at least for now. Maria's body ached, her hands were cut and raw, and her clothes were smeared with dirt and sweat. But she had done it. She had created a safe space for her children, a refuge built with her own hands and unbreakable determination. She looked at Alex, who nodded in quiet approval. There was no need for words. The work itself spoke volumes. That night, as Maria tucked her children into the shelter, she felt a strange mixture of relief and apprehension. The day had been long, painful, and exhausting, yet it had also been a testament to her strength and resilience. Alex had stayed until the end, silently acknowledging her courage, and then disappeared into the darkness, leaving Maria with a sense of cautious hope. For the first time since her husband's death, Maria realized she could survive this new reality. The road ahead would not be easy, and challenges would continue to arise, but she had proven to herself that she was capable of facing them. The shelter made of broken boards was more than just wood. It was a symbol of resilience, determination, and the quiet power of a woman who refused to give up. And though the memory of her husband remained ever present, Maria understood that life, no matter how harsh, also offered moments of unexpected support, moments that reminded her that even in grief, strength and courage could carry her forward. The morning sun had barely touched the earth when Maria awoke to the soft sounds of her children stirring inside the small shelter. Their laughter and tiny footsteps brought a warmth to her heart that she had not felt in months. She rose slowly, feeling the aches of yesterday still heavy in her muscles, but the sight of her children safe and happy gave her energy. They were resilient like her, though their innocence had shielded them from the depth of loss that Maria carried each day. Outside, the air was fresh and filled with the scent of damp earth and flowers from the nearby field. Maria stepped out and looked around, inspecting the shelter she had built the day before. It was not perfect. Certainly not the warm and solid home she had once shared with her husband, but it stood proud, a testament to determination and courage. She could feel the weight of survival pressing on her, but she also felt pride in what she had accomplished. Alex was already there. He had arrived silently, as he often did, standing a little distance away, observing. Maria's first instinct was to feel guarded. His presence was strange, unexpected, and a little unsettling. Yet there was something in his gaze that seemed different today, a mixture of concern, curiosity, and maybe even admiration. She didn't speak at first, returning his silent nod with a small, polite glance. She had learned long ago that words were often unnecessary with him. Alex was a quiet man, thoughtful in ways that few understood. For years she had kept her distance from him, unsure if he blamed her for his brother's death, unsure if he could ever see her as anything more than the widow who had taken his brother from the world too soon. But today, Maria noticed something subtle. Alex carried a bundle of small tools, hammer, nails, and a few extra boards. It was not much, but it was more than words. He stepped closer and without speaking handed her the bundle. Maria looked at him, her eyes narrowing slightly. "You don't have to help," she said quietly, though her voice carried a hint of appreciation. "I want to," Alex replied simply. There was no tone of command, no pressure, only honesty. Maria hesitated, studying his face, searching for any trace of judgment or blame. She found none. Instead, she saw someone who had lost a brother, someone who carried grief in his own silent way. And perhaps, she thought, grief could be shared without words. The day passed slowly. Together, they worked on reinforcing the shelter, strengthening weak walls and adding boards where the wind could sneak through. Their hands occasionally brushed as they passed tools, and each touch was a quiet reminder that, despite the tragedy, they were not entirely alone. Maria felt an unexpected mix of emotions: frustration at the lingering past, gratitude for the help, and curiosity about the man who had once been only a shadow in her life. As they worked, Alex finally spoke more than a few words at a time. He asked about her husband, about the children, and about how she had managed to survive these past months. Maria answered cautiously, telling the truth without revealing the depth of her despair. She did not want pity, nor did she want sympathy. She wanted acknowledgement, the simple recognition that she had fought through unbearable loss and continued to fight. Alex listened carefully, nodding at intervals, offering small insights or advice when necessary. He suggested ways to reinforce the shelter, shared memories of his brother's practical approach to building things, and even laughed softly at small anecdotes Maria recounted. For the first time since the accident, Maria felt a strange lightness in her chest. Laughter, even small and hesitant, seemed almost forbidden in the months after her husband's death, but now it slipped out naturally, mingling with the sound of hammering and the wind rustling through the boards. The children watched them curiously, especially the younger one, who ran around the shelter, asking questions about what they were building and why. Maria smiled at their curiosity, realizing that this simple act of rebuilding was teaching her children more than just survival. It was teaching them resilience, courage, and the importance of working together, even when life seemed unfair. Alex noticed how Maria carefully handled the children, guiding them gently when they tried to help and allowing them to explore their surroundings safely. He saw the strength in her that he had never truly appreciated before. She was more than a widow, more than a caretaker. She was a fighter, a mother, and a woman who refused to be broken by grief. As afternoon turned into evening, the shelter began to take shape in a more permanent way. Alex helped Maria place heavier boards in the corners, ensuring stability, while she adjusted smaller pieces to block gaps. They worked silently for long stretches, communicating through gestures and occasional words. The silence was comfortable, a shared understanding that actions could speak louder than speech. Finally, Alex paused, leaning on his hammer and looking at the structure they had created together. "It's strong," he said quietly. "Your children will be safe here." Maria nodded, feeling a surge of emotion. Safety had been something she had feared she could never provide again, but now, looking at the sturdy walls and the children playing inside, she felt hope. For the first time, hope did not feel fragile. It felt tangible, built board by board, with sweat, determination, and a silent partnership she had not expected. The evening grew cooler, and Maria realized they had been working for hours without noticing. Alex started to pack up the tools, and Maria did the same, though her mind was still buzzing with thoughts. She wanted to ask him why he had come, why he had stayed, why he seemed so willing to help despite their past. But the words would not come. She was not ready to confront the complicated emotions that his presence stirred inside her. Instead, they walked toward the small fire Maria had started, just enough to warm their hands and boil a pot of water. The children gathered around, their faces glowing in the flickering light. Alex crouched beside them, handing small pieces of bread, careful not to startle or upset them. Maria watched him closely, noting the patience and care in his actions. It was strange, yet comforting to see this side of him, the brother she had once seen as distant and indifferent. That night, after the children had fallen asleep inside the shelter, Maria and Alex sat quietly by the fire. The stars were bright above them, scattered across the sky like distant lanterns guiding lost travelers. Neither spoke for a long while, but the silence was no longer heavy or tense. It was peaceful, reflective, and filled with the possibility of understanding. Finally, Alex spoke softly, almost as if he were talking to himself. "I should have been here before," he said. "I should have helped. I thought it wasn't my place, but I was wrong. Your strength, it's remarkable." Maria looked at him, her eyes searching for sincerity, and found it in the steady calm of his gaze. She felt a mix of relief and sadness, relief that someone finally acknowledged her struggle, and sadness for the time they had lost, the months of silence and misunderstanding. "I managed," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the emotions welling inside her. "I had to. There was no one else." She did not blame him, nor did she hold resentment. She simply stated the truth. Alex nodded, understanding more in that moment than any words could express. They stayed by the fire for a while longer, speaking in fragments about the past, sharing memories of her husband, and reflecting on the future. Maria realized that this connection, though born from tragedy, was a bridge, a way to navigate grief together rather than in isolation. She felt a cautious sense of trust growing, a recognition that perhaps Alex's presence could be a source of support rather than conflict. When they finally parted for the night, Alex offered to stay nearby, promising to check in and help as needed. Maria accepted, silently grateful for the quiet partnership. She knew the road ahead would still be hard, storms could come, and survival would demand every ounce of strength she had. But she also knew she was no longer facing it alone. That night, as she lay beside her children, Maria reflected on the day. The shelter they had built was more than wood and nails. It was a symbol of resilience, courage, and the quiet power of determination. And Alex, once a distant figure in her life, had become a presence she could rely on, a reminder that grief and loss could sometimes be softened by unexpected kindness and support. For the first time in months, Maria allowed herself to dream, not of the past, but of a future where she, her children, and even Alex could move forward together. A future where survival was not just about getting through each day, but about rebuilding life, hope, and trust, piece by piece. And as the night deepened, the fire flickering low, Maria knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges. But she also knew that, for the first time since her husband's death, she would face them with someone at her side, someone who understood pain, loss, and the strength it took to keep going. The next morning, the village was alive with its usual sounds: roosters crowing, distant chatter of neighbors, and the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. Maria woke early, her body still sore from the previous days of labor, but a quiet sense of purpose filled her. The shelter was standing firm, but she knew there was more work to be done. The roof needed extra support, and the gaps in the walls still let in cold drafts. She had survived storms before, and she intended to protect her children no matter what. As she stepped outside, Alex was already there. He had brought more tools and some pieces of wood that were in better condition than the scraps they had been using. Maria felt a small pang of surprise mixed with gratitude. He did not speak immediately, instead assessing the shelter, noticing weak points that even Maria had overlooked. His presence was no longer tense or intimidating. It had become quiet, dependable, like the shadow of a tree providing shade on a hot day. "Good morning," Maria said cautiously. Her voice was steady, but inside she felt a flutter of uncertainty. She wasn't sure how much she should let him be part of their lives. "Morning," Alex replied softly. "I thought we could reinforce the roof today. It might not hold if another storm comes." His tone was calm, practical, and Maria nodded in agreement. They worked in silence at first, passing boards, hammering nails, and occasionally stepping back to examine their progress. The children watched from a safe distance, their curiosity growing with each movement. The older boy, inspired by his mother's and uncle's efforts, tried to help by handing small tools and gathering nails. Maria smiled faintly, proud of their courage and willingness to assist. She could see how much they were learning, not just about building, but about resilience, patience, and the importance of teamwork. As the sun climbed higher, the work became more physically demanding. Maria's arms ached, sweat ran down her face, and small cuts from the wood reminded her of the effort involved. But with every hammer strike and every plank placed, she felt a sense of accomplishment. The shelter was becoming more than just a structure. It was a symbol of survival, hope, and determination. Alex worked quietly beside her, occasionally offering suggestions or holding a board steady while Maria secured it. There was no awkwardness now, no tension from the past. Instead, there was mutual respect. Maria noticed how carefully he handled the children when they wandered too close, the gentle patience in his eyes, and the quiet acknowledgement of her strength. Slowly, the boundaries between them were shifting, forming a tentative bond born from shared purpose rather than necessity. Around midday, they paused for a short rest. Maria handed the children a few pieces of bread while Alex fetched water from a nearby stream. They sat under the small shade of a tree, catching their breath. Maria looked at Alex, noticing the lines of grief still etched on his face. She realized that his brother's death had affected him as deeply as it had affected her, though he had expressed it in different ways. Where Maria's grief had driven her to action, Alex's had been quieter, restrained, and careful, waiting for a way to make amends or find purpose. "Why did you stay?" Maria asked suddenly, breaking the silence. "You could have just watched or walked away. No one would have blamed you. Watching you struggle, seeing you fight every day, it reminded me of him. I wanted to do something, even if it was small. For them." She gestured toward her children, who were now laughing and playing nearby, pretending the tools were swords and the boards were forts. "And now, with help, it feels like maybe survival isn't so lonely." Each plank was carefully measured and secured, and slowly the shelter became stronger and more weatherproof. The rhythm of their work, passing tools, hammering nails, adjusting boards, created a sense of teamwork and connection that had been absent from both of their lives for too long. By afternoon, clouds began to gather in the sky, warning of a possible rainstorm. Maria's heart skipped a beat, but she pushed aside worry, focusing on the task at hand. Alex noticed her tension and offered a reassuring smile. "It will hold," he said quietly, though his eyes scanned the sky with concern. "We've done good work today. Whatever comes, they'll be safe inside." Maria worked with precise determination, hammering each nail with care while Alex held pieces steady and helped guide her efforts. The children were ushered inside, giggling as the rain tapped against the shelter's roof. For the first time in months, Maria felt a sense of relief. Their home might be small and makeshift, but it would keep her children dry and protected. The storm grew heavier, the rain pouring down in sheets, wind shaking the fragile structure. Maria's hands ached, but she refused to stop, determined to see the shelter through the test. Alex worked beside her, moving with her in perfect coordination, reinforcing weak points and checking every corner. By evening, the storm had passed, leaving behind a fresh smell of earth and a glistening landscape. The shelter had survived. Maria stood back, taking in their work. She looked at the walls, the roof, and the small space that now served as a safe haven for her family. Pride swelled in her chest. She had faced impossible odds, endured loss, and built something lasting with her own hands and with unexpected help. Alex approached, brushing mud off his hands. "You've done incredible work," he said, genuine admiration in his voice. "I didn't realize how strong you are." Maria felt warmth in her heart. Praise from him, especially after everything, was not just acknowledgement. It was validation of her struggle, her courage, and her unwavering determination to protect her children. They spent the evening inside the shelter, the children playing quietly while Maria and Alex prepared a simple meal. The warmth of the fire and the laughter of the children created a sense of normalcy that had been absent for far too long. Maria felt a cautious optimism, a sense that life, despite its hardships, could still offer moments of peace, connection, and shared purpose. Over the next few days, their routine became established. Maria worked tirelessly to maintain the shelter and care for the children, while Alex continued to provide assistance quietly, never overstepping boundaries but always present when needed. Their interactions grew more comfortable, conversations more natural, and the trust between them deepened. They shared stories of the past, spoke of dreams for the future, and reflected on the life they had lost and the life they could still build. One afternoon, as Maria repaired a small section of the roof, she paused to look at Alex. He was fixing a loose plank, his movements precise and careful. She noticed the concentration on his face, the care he took with each task, and felt a swell of gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly, "for staying, for helping, for being here." For the first time in a long time, she realized that their connection was no longer defined by grief or past misunderstandings. It was defined by respect, shared effort, and a quiet bond forged through adversity. As evening approached, the children fell asleep inside the shelter, their laughter replaced by soft breathing. Maria and Alex sat outside, watching the stars begin to appear. The day had been long, filled with work, small challenges, and moments of reflection, but it had also been meaningful. The shelter was now strong, the children safe, and an unexpected connection had formed between two people brought together by loss and circumstance. Maria realized that life would continue to test her, and challenges would not disappear, but she felt a renewed sense of determination. She had survived storms before, both literal and emotional, and now she understood that she was not alone. Alex's presence, quiet yet steady, was a reminder that support could come from unexpected places, and that even in grief, hope and resilience could grow. As they prepared to rest for the night, Maria felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the shelter or the safety of her children, but for the possibility of trust, understanding, and companionship. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in months, she felt that they could face it together. And in that quiet, star-filled night, Maria allowed herself to imagine a future where survival was not just about enduring hardship, but about building a life filled with care, courage, and connection. The morning after the storm was calm and bright. Sunlight poured over the village, glinting off wet leaves and sparkling on the remnants of the rain-soaked earth. Maria stepped outside the shelter, taking a deep breath of fresh air. The storm had tested their work, but the shelter had held firm. Her children were already awake, running around and laughing, their joy a balm to her tired heart. The sight reminded her why she had worked so hard, why every board, nail, and hammer strike had mattered. Alex was already nearby, tending to the small repairs needed after the storm. The wind had shifted a few loose boards and dislodged some of the smaller pieces, but the structure was sound. He glanced at Maria as she approached, offering a small smile of encouragement. "We did well," he said. "The storm was tough, but the shelter held. They're safe." Maria nodded, a warmth spreading in her chest. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of calm, a feeling that the worst of life's challenges did not always have to overwhelm her. The children ran toward her, holding small sticks and pretending they were swords. Maria laughed softly, ruffling the hair of her youngest. She looked around the shelter, now standing proudly among the green fields, and felt a sense of accomplishment. It was more than wood and nails. It was a symbol of survival, determination, and hope. And for the first time, she felt that hope wasn't fragile. It had weight, substance, and permanence. Alex approached, helping to lift a heavier board into place for one of the small gaps in the roof. Maria watched him, noticing the care with which he worked. He had been there for several days now, quietly assisting, never intruding, never imposing, but always present. Slowly, she realized that his presence had become comforting. She could no longer remember the tension or unease she had felt when he first appeared. Instead, there was trust, understanding, and a shared purpose that seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. As they worked, the children explored the surrounding fields, picking flowers and chasing small animals, their laughter ringing through the morning air. Maria smiled, feeling her heart lighten. She realized that even in the midst of grief, life could still hold joy, small moments of beauty and happiness. And the shelter they had built together was the foundation of that joy, a place where her children could grow safely and play freely. By midday, the structure was fully reinforced. The walls were strong, the roof secure, and the interior safe from wind and rain. Maria walked inside with her children, showing them how to move safely and explaining that this space was theirs. The children's eyes sparkled with excitement, their curiosity turning the small shelter into a world of imagination and adventure. Maria watched them and felt a sense of peace she had not known since her husband's death. She had provided safety, stability, and a place of comfort. Alex remained outside, quietly observing, but when Maria asked him to come in and see their work, he joined them. He knelt beside the children, helping them arrange small objects and making the space feel like a home. Maria watched silently, feeling gratitude swell in her heart. She had feared isolation, the loneliness of widowhood, and the burden of survival, but now she realized that life could offer companionship and support in unexpected ways. As evening approached, they gathered around a small fire inside the shelter. Maria prepared a simple meal, and Alex helped set it before them. The children ate with laughter and chatter, their spirits high and hearts light. Maria felt a warmth that had been absent for months, a sense of family and connection that extended beyond grief and loss. She realized that the shelter was more than a physical space. It was the beginning of rebuilding life, trust, and hope. Later, when the children had fallen asleep, Maria and Alex sat together outside, the stars beginning to appear in the clear night sky. The air was cool, carrying the scent of wet earth and the faint fragrance of nearby flowers. For a while, neither spoke. They simply sat, sharing the quiet comfort of companionship and the knowledge that despite past sorrow, life had a way of moving forward. Finally, Alex broke the silence. "I never realized how much strength you had," he said softly. "I watched you these past days, and I saw someone who refused to give up, no matter how hard life was. You've built more than a shelter, you've built hope for your children and for yourself." Maria felt a lump in her throat. Praise from him was unexpected, but it was genuine and it carried a weight she could not ignore. "You've helped too," she replied quietly. "I couldn't have done it alone. You didn't just bring boards and tools, you brought support. You were patient, careful, and present. That mattered more than you know." Alex nodded, a quiet smile touching his lips. The tension that had once defined their interactions was gone, replaced by understanding, respect, and an unspoken bond forged through shared struggle. Over the following weeks, their lives began to settle into a routine. Maria cared for her children, tending to their needs, preparing meals, and maintaining the shelter. Alex continued to assist, quietly and reliably, offering help when needed but always allowing Maria to lead. Their cooperation became seamless, a dance of mutual respect and understanding. They shared stories of the past, spoke of dreams for the future, and reflected on the challenges they had overcome together. Maria began to notice subtle changes in herself. She felt less weighed down by grief, more confident in her ability to face difficulties, and more open to the idea of companionship. She saw that life, though harsh at times, could also offer kindness, support, and moments of joy. Alex's presence reminded her that trust could be rebuilt, that connections could be formed even after loss, and that resilience could bring people together in unexpected ways. One afternoon, a neighbor passed by, stopping to admire the shelter. "This is remarkable," the neighbor said. "You've built something strong and beautiful. Your children are lucky to have this." Maria felt a swell of pride. She looked at Alex, who gave a subtle nod, sharing the quiet satisfaction of their joint effort. It was more than a compliment. It was acknowledgement of their perseverance, creativity, and courage. As the day drew to a close, Maria and Alex prepared for another quiet evening. The children were playing safely inside the shelter, their laughter echoing through the small space. Maria felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had faced the most difficult period of her life, survived, and built a place of safety and love. And in the process, she had discovered that support, trust, and hope could emerge even from the darkest circumstances. That night, as they sat beneath the stars, Maria spoke softly. "I never imagined life could feel like this again," she said. "After everything, after losing him, I thought I would always be alone, struggling and surviving. But now it feels possible to move forward." Alex reached out, gently placing a hand on hers. "You're not alone," he said. "You haven't been, and you won't be. I'll be here and I'll help however I can. Together, we can face whatever comes next." The shelter, once just a structure of wood and nails, had become a symbol of resilience, courage, and the power of human connection. In the following days, life continued, but it had a new rhythm. Maria's children laughed more freely, played more boldly, and slept more peacefully. The shelter, sturdy and safe, gave them a sense of security they had not felt in months. Maria herself felt lighter, more capable, and more open to trust. She had faced loss, hardship, and grief, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more connected than before. Alex remained a quiet presence, always offering help, guidance, and companionship without demanding recognition. Their bond, forged in shared struggle and strengthened through action, grew naturally. Maria understood that life could offer unexpected gifts, that trust and support could come from places she had never imagined, and that even in sorrow, hope and resilience could flourish. One evening, as they all sat together inside the shelter, Maria watched her children play, their laughter filling the space. She looked at Alex, feeling gratitude and understanding, and realized that the future was no longer just about survival. It was about building a life filled with care, connection, and the quiet joy of knowing that even in hardship people could come together, hearts and hands united by shared purpose and strength. And in that moment, Maria understood that the shelter was more than a home. It was a testament to human courage, love, and the quiet power of hope. She had rebuilt her world from broken boards, tears, and determination. And in doing so, she had discovered that life, no matter how challenging, could offer not only survival but also the chance for trust, connection, and the promise of better days ahead.